Welcome everybody from around the world, hopefully. It is a late night for us, a Friday night for myself in California and my teammate Adam Blocker on the East Coast. We are here at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya, a slightly different name, at the historic layout for some V8 Supercar action, the V8 Americas Series. Adam, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty well.
So yeah, you obviously raced here, I guess this morning technically, in the AOSC Enduros. So I tell you what, why don't you talk us through an onboard lap with the guy that we're currently riding on with, Forzan El Nabi, as he comes around the final corner.
Yeah, so, well first, I think the first lap here is probably going to be faster with the new tire, the tire changes they've made. But yeah, so now he's going down the long straight. This is the main passing opportunity of this track. He's going to probably break around the 150 board. It's not a board, but it's like placing the gate. You don't really compromise the first two corners that much, actually. You actually kind of drive in pretty shallow into turn 3, because it's such a long corner. You end up hugging the inside for a while. Yeah, then it's just a lot of progressive throttle application. Turn 4 is a lot of the same thing. It's, you see, you get to apex, and then it's a long time waiting to get the throttle. And for 4, there's a really quick transition to 5. You got to get over to the right really quickly. No braking markers, so it's easy to miss your braking point there. Other than that, it's a pretty straightforward corner. 6 and 7 coming up are technical. They're combined. If you get 6 slightly wrong, you know, you mess up. You can go too deep for 7. You can take that yellow curve you just hopped over. 8 is pretty fast. Normally 4th gear. It's easy to get an off track or even a slowdown if you go a little bit wide there. So look out for that. Actually, I think he just got an off track, so he aborted the lap.
Did indeed. So let's switch to Jake Maloney, who I believe won the race that we broadcast last week, Adam. So as he also abandons his lap, let's ride on board with James Scott instead, who is coming to that same part of the track right now.
Okay, yeah. The hairpin at the end of the back straight, I was braking at like the 100-meter board. There's a lot of lines people are taking through here just because the exit of this is so weird. The corner just goes on for so long. As you can see, sliding on power application out of there. It's pretty standard. Through here, you can either square it off or take a tight line. You took a tight line. Yeah, the last 2 corners are pretty straightforward. Take a lot of curb entry to the penultimate corner, and then last corner is just a point and shoot 3rd gear corner. So I guess in general, you can get off tracks pretty easily if you push the exits, but it's not really that difficult.
So James Scott will stay in 2nd position. As we try to see some of your drivers still riding around right now. Adam, I noticed you talked about sending it hard into 1 and 2, but I saw a lot of the drivers sending it hard in general around the track. You know, we did have a tire update this week, but how did you find that the tires held up over the course of the stint at this track?
I found, at least with the setup we had, the Mach 1 setup, it was like the first, 2 or 3 laps, you could get some really good times. The first lap especially, good time, then maybe fall off a couple tenths, and then once you got 4 or 5 laps in, you might even be up to a second slower, but then it pretty much plateaued as long as you kept good handle on your tires and didn't slide them too much. The thing is here, a lot of times it actually doesn't harm you that much to drive it in deep into the corner, just because the corner is so long that you have time to set up the exit regardless. So there's kind of multiple lines you can take through quite a few of the corners.
Well, it is a cold session here. The air temperature 20 degrees Celsius, and since it is 9:30 in the morning, we are looking at a track temperature of 21 degrees Celsius. So fairly cool track over here for us today. Some information about the circuit. It's about 4.7 kilometers with a 13-turn configuration today. We don't use the regular GP layout. Instead, we skip that horrible chicane that they added for safety reasons in F1 in 2007. Instead, we get the original configuration where these cars obviously taking those last 2 corners fairly high speed. The track was resurfaced in 2018. Now, we did get that version of the track, so hopefully a nice smooth ride for some of these cars. But there are plenty of curves as we take a look right there at the big yellow curve that we saw Forzan El Nabi hopping his car over. Adam, do you happen to know what the fuel numbers are for this race here today?
I know with the full tank we were running AOSC, it was 28 laps. I think they were running 60% tanks, so whatever 60% of 28 is. It's like 16, 17 laps. I think you'll see people pit before that. I think people will probably pit as soon as the people around them start pitting, so probably around halfway through the race, because like I said, you get a pretty big pace advantage the first lap out of the pits, so yeah, you don't want to be too far behind the curve and get jumped by everybody behind you. So
maybe some cars going to try the undercut there. Let's quickly go ahead and take a look at the starting grid for the race today. Fauzan El Nabi, second consecutive pole position on these broadcasts, and maybe some good luck we are bringing him in these races here. James Scott's going to line up to his outside. Then you've got Jake Maloney, Sean Linsdell, Brian Borg, Sean Thompson, Jack Widas, Matthew Deere, Jeremy Rogers, Marty Hansen, Stefan Kakashek. Whoopsie, I was trying to mute these guys. Then you've got Kristen Smart. Further back in your field, we have Powerslide team owner Richard Tam lining up in 13th place. Then you got Jason Fuins, who's currently not on the grid just yet, but Blake Dubois, Vincent Skillbeck, Ben Morris, Craig Schultz, and Rory Windrum will line up at the rear of your field here. Obviously, a standing start here. We'll see how. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
I was gonna say, like we saw at Silverstone, there could be a pretty big difference in terms of how the difference between how people perform off the start. So definitely be wild going in.
And of course, it's a fairly sizable run down towards turn 1 here. So let's see, maybe some cars further in the back getting that better start, going to try and make an aggressive move. But here we go. All your cars are on the grid and the engines are revving. The lights
green
are illuminating, and away we go. Fauzan El Nabi with a good start out front. James Scott behind him will fall into second, I think. Further back, you have some action. Might even have 3 wide down into turn 1. And there's a little bit of contact there. Brian Borg going around. He was hit. But that was Jack Widas, who does turn him around, but very courteously staying, just holding position and letting Brian Borg retake the position from him, despite falling all the way down the field.
Yeah, Jack Widas got a good start. He was trying to go through the middle of 2 cars, 3 wide, and it just didn't work out. Went too deep on the brakes and hit Brian Borg there. Let's see how they recover throughout.
Further out front, though, Sean Linsdell, he's fighting. That is Sean Thompson, currently going too wide for 2 corners in a row. They're going to have to funnel single file, though, down as they move their way to turn 5. And Sean Linsdell is going to hold the position there. Sean Thompson thinking about the over-under as he makes his way to his inside here. But not able to get that move. That's a little bit of a risky place to really try and get the move done. Maybe into this heavy braking zone here, as you can see, he's looking to the inside to just defend. That's Matthew Deere behind him.
Yeah, you can go wheel to wheel through a lot of these corners, but the thing is, the more you go wheel to wheel, the more time you lose. You just lose a lot of time doing it, but it is worth it to try to fight for position, because track position is pretty important. It's not easy to pass. I mean, you can pass a bunch of places, but it's not easy, so you definitely take any spots you can, especially at the start.
So at the rear of your field, Jack Widas, he was involved in that turn 1 incident. He's now had a subsequent few incidents since then, and he is now in pit lane. Appears to be your first retirement from this race. Fauzan El Nabi currently leads, though, by 1 second from James Scott. Your top 4 all in their starting order. Further back, that's where the chaos happened. Sean Thompson and Sean Lizelle continue to fight hard here.
Looks like Blake Dubois was the biggest mover on the first lap, 15th to 10th, with mostly taking advantage of the incident in turn 1 to gain like 3 spots up.
Your other big mover was Kristen Smart, also up 5 positions, but currently ride with Stefan Kakashek, and he's trying to make a move on the American Jeremy Rogers in that gold, white, and black car. I really do like how some of these cars look here today, especially with the spec map in this early morning light. And Stefan Kakashek getting right on the bumper of Jeremy Rogers as you see them hopping over that curve. little bit difficult to make the move down into this next corner though, Adam, right?
You could dive it. He was a little bit too far back to make an attempt, but if your front bumper is lined up with their rear bumper, you can definitely have a good dive into there. You can afford to go a little bit deep and still get a good enough exit to hold the position. So, but I mean, either line works, sort of. I mean, you can easily defend by breaking deep too.
Up in fourth, we see Sean in that 12 car having a big slide coming around that last corner, but still carrying significant momentum down the straight and pulling away a little bit from Sean Thompson. Walzan El Nabi continuing to pull away out front. Now got a 1 second gap over James Scott. Jake Maloney 2 seconds behind in third. And then there's 3.5 seconds to this battle for fourth right now.
Yeah, Lenzo went a little bit wide in turn 3, and Thompson just looks like he's setting him up well on almost all the exits of the corner, so I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a good run eventually.
Now in Formula One, they talk about the Formula 1.5 class. We have an equivalent of that here today. That's the non-Australian class, I guess you would call it. Your current leader, Jeremy Rogers, in 8th position, having some connection issues right now, but Stefan Kakashek still pressuring the rear. You have a few more non-Australian drivers in the race today. You have Jeremy Rogers, Blake Dubois, Richard Tam, and Rory Windrum. So 4 out of your 19 drivers not in America. That does mean that we should have an American server used here today. So maybe some of the Australian drivers having to deal with a little bit more netcode.
No, it's an Australian server.
Oh, okay. So maybe some of these Americans then having to deal with a bit more netcode than they would like. We are seeing that there are trains starting to form behind certain cars right now. Your top 3 cars still separated by less than 2.5 seconds right now.
Yeah, it looks like the top 3 clearly sort of in their own class, and then it looks like a train behind, P4, Lenza, and further back, behind Jeremy Rogers, Stephen Kakashek, there's a bunch of cars.
Walzan El Nabi now almost 2 seconds out front right now, pulling away from James Scott and Jake Maloney.
Yeah, Walzan won the AOSC Enduro last night with Harley Haber, so I wouldn't be surprised if he also wins this race. They were pretty strong last night. Actually, a lot of these guys were in that race. Kind of surprised they want to do more Barcelona after a 4-hour race last night.
Well, I think for some of these guys, just an opportunity to gain some I-rating potentially. You take a look at the I-rating game for some of your cars. Your biggest winner in terms of I-rating is going to be Matthew Deere. That's going to be 76 I-rating. He's only it's less than 2,000 I-rating in this 3K strength of field. So having a good run so far and going to collect a nice little chunk of I-rating here. Adam, you just recently broke the 6K mark, so congratulations. But how long did it take you to go from, let's say, 5 to 6K?
It was like 6 months. It wasn't that bad, but it took me a very long time to go from 4 to 5.
Obviously, I-rating a long-term play here.
I think Kakashek's definitely holding up Blake Dubois. And Kakashek's corner. He gets it back on the road, but yeah, Blake Dubois is definitely pressuring him pretty hard throughout the whole circuit.
Did he get a slowdown there? Because he ran to the outside of that anti-cut curve, and I'm not sure if he got a slowdown there.
I think he's just getting off track.
Okay, well, Stefan Kakashek having to defend from Blake Dubois. Blake Dubois is going to dive down on the inside into turn 1, and they both run very wide. And Marty Hansen going to jump in front of Stefan Kakashek, as well as Richard Tam. So, a few drivers. Richard Tam actually going to look now on the inside of Blake Dubois as they move their way down towards turn 4. I think Richard's going to be able to... Oh, no! That was a big incident. Many cars involved. Let's go ahead and watch a replay of that incident.
Richard did a thing. That was not good.
I think Richard unfortunately went a little bit too deep into the corner. As we'll ride on board, you can see him diving hard and just scrubbing way too wide. Unfortunately getting collected from the rear as well for good measure. So a good 4 or 5 cars involved there taking damage.
I think Richard's car will be okay, but some of the others are not as fortunate.
So Stefan Kakashek, though, is going to hold on to the place at least for now. He's still in 10th place. Both Jeremy Rogers and Marty Hansen able to get through that unscathed, it looks like. So Jeremy Rogers extending his gap here and starting to work on Christian Smart out in front. We do look a little further back. Richard Tam involved in that incident, now on the rear of Brian Borg. Brian Borg also involved in a lap 1, turn 1 incident, but you see the heavy damage to his nose there. That's going to be some considerable effect to his car's performance. I wonder how he got that amount of damage.
He got it from the incident just now. He kind of got collected in the aftermath of it.
Let's see if we can ride on board with Brian Borg. As you see, he's actually in the rear here of the shot, as you see Richard diving to the inside there. And that's an unfortunate incident for Brian with nowhere to go there. A surprising amount of damage given the level of contact it appeared that he had.
Yeah, sometimes even if you lose the bonnet, as the Aussies would call it, it doesn't always cost you a lot of speed. I mean, it costs you some straight line speed, but it probably won't hurt the handling too much if he only made light contact. There's no way to really know. It's kind of hard to tell from the outside. Oh, and he's struggling though. He's going wide a lot of the corners. So
he's struggling, but right now, Jason Bowens is trying to fend off Ben Morris here for 11th place as they dive towards this alternate hairpin. We're 6 laps into this race, and Richard and Brian both appear to have had another incident here. So more chaos for Richard Tam right now. Unfortunate for him. Let's see if we can see what happens here. Coming down towards the hairpin. And I think he just missed his braking point, and unfortunately hits 5 car of Brian Borg again. Brian not having a fun race whatsoever so far.
yeah, I think he just missed his braking point. I don't think he was trying to pass or anything.
Meanwhile, the battle for 11th, Ben Morris does take the position away from the number 15 car, that bright pink and white car. I think Richard's still having some issues at the rear of the field right now, down in 18th place. Still has some cars in front of him that he might be looking to try and fight.
Looks like almost all the guys in the top 5 or 6 have pretty much spread out, almost all like a second and a half, 2 seconds separating each other. They'll probably just be looking to settle into a groove and take care of their tires, so maybe they can catch up at the end of the stint a little bit, make some good time at the end of the stint, and then also trying to think about when they're going to pit, because like we were saying before, if you can manage to undercut somebody by a couple laps, that'll be it could be pretty big at the end of the race. So.
Yeah, we saw Jason Bowens make a mistake there, and he's slipped from the rear of Ben Morris into the clutches of Vincent Skillback right now. Vincent Skillback trying to close the gap now, make his way further forward. And so with 7 complete laps under their belt right now, I think a lot of these cars going to start feeling some of that tire wear. We talked about 1 second of fall off. Adam, what is the fall off looking like for the fastest car right now, Falzan El Nabi?
I mean, his fastest lap was a high 41, and he did a couple 42s, and now he's doing high 43s. So you can already see, even on this, pretty much one of the coldest track temps you could get, he's got almost a second of fall off. And it looks like it's fairly similar for everyone behind him, just that Falzan was doing faster laps before, and he's also doing faster laps after. So But it looks like the relative, difference between their fastest and their current laps are relatively the same.
Gap out front now is 3 seconds. So Bogdan El Nabi had a little bit of a tough race last Friday after qualifying on pole, but this time, no such issues. He's running away with the lead of this race. Ryan Borg and Rory Windrum having a fun battle at the rear of your field, but closest battle for cars without damage, I would have to say, would be this one. Jason Fairwood still fighting Vincent Skilbeck, and Vincent slowly pulling up to the rear. And you can see it does appear as though Vincent having a lot more tire life under him, able to carry more speed into the corner there. Maybe Jason just pushed a little bit too early on the tires and now paying the price for that.
Yeah, Vincent definitely looks like he's driving pretty smooth, keeping his rear tires in check. So that'll definitely pay off over the next few laps, especially if he can get past Jason, then maybe make some headway into... Yeah, you were talking about this little sausage curve going to the final corner. Some guys last night were putting their whole car on the right side of it. Then there were some guys that were actually straddling it going into the corner because the turn-in point is after the curb ends. So some people were straddling it, and apparently you don't get an off-track for straddling it.
Well, I think that's something that can only really be done in the Supercars, because I've done quite a few races here in some other cars, and let me tell you, an HPD does not like being up on that curb one bit.
Yeah, pretty much that curb didn't really upset the supercar at all. It was basically just as long as you don't go over it, as long as you straddle it, it did absolutely nothing.
Well, I guess when you're in cars that move around as much as these ones do, it tends to be okay. Blake Dubois, by the way, your first taker down onto pit lane. So maybe trying to undercut some of the drivers he was battling, but he did have a few incidents, so potentially also just coming down for damage.
Yeah, it seems like kind of an early stop to me. I mean, he's probably going to be struggling a lot more compared to some of the other guys at the end of the race, but maybe, he was out of track position, lost some spots from an incident, so just trying to see if he can, take a big swing and hope he can make up quite a few spots on the undercut, especially if these guys don't respond.
Further out front, though, we do see another car diving down onto pit lane. That is Kristen Smart, who gets a little bit sideways on pit entry there. He's trying to make the undercut work on Matthew Deere in front of him. So Christian Smart pitting from 7th place on track. Maybe some more of these cars going to try and similar. We're going to pull up a track map so you guys can see. Your leader currently going down towards turn 4. And Stefan Kakashek also down onto pit entry.
I think that was an intelligent move from Smart, because he was definitely getting held up by Matthew Deere. Matthew Deere starting to struggle on old tires, and yeah, hopefully he can jump him here in the pit stop cycle, at least for his.
So we rejoined this battle. Vincent Skilbeck did manage to get by Jason Fairwinds down into turn 1. Vincent Skilbeck now up into 9th place. He's up 7 places from his starting position. Now his car is starting to come down into pit lane. Definitely looks like he's got fresher set of tires under him than the cars behind him, so let's see if maybe he's able to extend this stint a little bit further than cars behind him. I do love the chrome gold on the rear of his paint as well. It really does pop. These newer tracks in iRacing with their superior texture quality really coming to show just how good the sim can look, especially compared to, I hate to say it, tomorrow at Barber, where even with some of the updates that came this week, it's still definitely showing its age compared to a track like this.
This is why we can't have nice things, Arjun.
I know, because we like to point out some of the issues, but I mean, it's just amazing how good Barcelona looks. I really think that some of these new tracks in iRacing really looking fantastic. Sean Thompson also down onto pit lane right now, so many takers.
Matthew Deere stays out again, kind of surprised with Smart behind him pitting, and he's a second and a half off of his fastest time. I'm kind of surprised he's staying out right now.
Vincent
I
Skilbeck.
definitely agree that Skillbeck's going to try to stay out to extend it. That's kind of his play right now. He seems like he took pretty good care of his tires compared to the guys next to him.
He's already pulled a second on Jason Fairwinds as more cars dive down onto pit lane. Brian Borg also on pit lane. Steven Kakashek, unfortunately, still parked in pit lane and appears to maybe be your second retirement from this race. Jack Wides, your first retirement, so 2 cars maybe out of this race. But out front, Forzan El Nabi continuing to lead. He's now built up a 4-second gap to James Scott behind him. And then there's an extra 2 seconds to Jake Maloney in 3rd place. A very comfortable race for Forzan so far. Maybe coming down pit lane in a few laps' time.
Yeah, I would expect him to either pit this time or next time, just to cover off undercut from either James or Jake behind. But yeah, I think he has it pretty much covered. As long as he does that and doesn't make any mistakes, he should have. And he stays out.
He stays out, and we could see what you were talking about a few laps ago, Adam, where he was just using that curb to extend the width of the track a little bit. So, interesting to see. James Scott and Jake Maloney also staying out, as is Sean Linzel in 4th position. We haven't talked too much about Sean since that early battle he had, but he's managed to hold on to the back of these guys fairly well. Only 10 seconds behind your leader despite some early fighting. So doing a good job so far.
Yeah, it looks like he's clearly doesn't have the pace of the leaders, but he has a pace advantage on everyone behind him, so he's kind of just in no man's land. Although, I think there was a car that was just behind him that already pitted. Maybe Sean Thompson. Yeah, I think Sean Thompson is pitted already, and he was up near Linsell, so it'd be interesting to see where they come out in relation to each other.
As Richard Tam, Powerslide team owner, dives down onto pit lane, I think you're right, but I do believe that Sean did pull a little bit of a gap, big enough that we didn't really focus too much more on him, so maybe now Sean trying to make the undercut work. He's already starting to catch some of that traffic. He's currently behind Rory Windrum, so he's going to be
held up a lot. Yeah.
He's getting held up a lot. He's having to go around the outside here of turn 2 and 3. That's not the ideal line, and I think Rory Windrum's going to continue fighting him down into turn 4 as well. This is costing him.
Not sure why, but yeah.
This is costing Sean Thompson a lot of time right now and helping Sean Linzel quite a bit.
Yeah, he at least lost a second, maybe a second and a half there through that exchange. So probably not going to be too happy. And if I was Sean Linzel, I would pit sooner rather than later. You know, while you might have that.
The lead is pitting now.
Out front, Forzan El Nabi, James Scott, and Jake Maloney all on pit lane.
Linzel stays out.
So maybe Sean seeing that Sean Thompson having issues and just able to run one more lap to give himself fresher tires at the end of this race.
Yeah, and I think once James and Jake saw Forzan come in, they were afraid that the other James and Jake would would pit, so they all just sort of had to follow Forzan in to not get on.
So Forzan El Nabi is going to come back out onto track in 3rd place. He's going to continue to lead from James Scott and Jake Maloney. Vincent Skilbeck, though, going to be inserted into the middle of this battle. It's one of your cars who has not come down pit lane just yet. So that leaves Sean Linzel, Matthew Deere, Vincent Skilbeck, and Jason Fairwinds, and Rory Windrum as your cars in the top 10 who have not pitted yet. James Scott able to extend the gap a little bit to Jake Maloney right now, and he's going to be hoping that that 3 car of Jake Maloney going to get held up a little bit behind the chrome gold car of Vincent Skilbeck. But I have to think you're already past the halfway point of this race. You might not want to extend the stint any further than you already have because you're going to leave yourself no time to really make use of those fresh tires, Adam.
Yeah, exactly. At some point, you can't make up. Yeah, we see Linzel in the pits. It's hard to make up a ton of time here as it is, and yeah, you don't have a ton of time where the fresh tires are a huge advantage. So
the lead is pitting now.
See where Linzel comes out in relation to Sean.
So Sean Thompson coming around take those last 2 corners right now.
Matthew Deere also in. He was fighting with Smart before the pit stop cycle.
So Christian Smart about 4 seconds behind Sean Thompson right now. But I think Sean is still in his pit box right now. Oh no, Sean is just coming out of pit lane right now. I think Sean Thompson going to get the jump despite getting held up. But Sean is going to have 3-lap fresher tires. Let's see if he can make that work. As Sean Thompson makes a big mistake down into turn 1. That purple...
I think Linsell is going to have the advantage now. He's on fresh tires. As long as he gets the tires up in temp, he can make a move and hopefully pull away.
And now Matthew Deere was fighting with Christian Smart, but Christian Smart is... I think he's taken the position. I think Matthew Deere might have had some issues on his entry into pit lane because of how slow he was. Matthew Deere now past Rory Rindrum. One more car who still has not pitted. Vincent Skillback, the other one.
Yeah, we didn't talk about it at all, but the pit entry here is actually pretty tough in these cars. It's pretty much like a high-speed street circuit corner. It's really narrow, and there's walls on both sides. And in old tires, it's really slick. You saw Christian Smart basically do a 4-wheel slide through there, so definitely tough. A couple guys in the AOSC race last night were forced to actually miss pit entry instead of hitting the walls.
It is definitely a high commitment pit entry here, and maybe that's why some of these drivers are able to gain some time on their competitors. You can see Sean Thompson starting to edge away a little bit, but just a reminder, that purple car behind him has just come out of the pits with 3-lap fresher tires. This is the battle for 4th place as Vincent Skillback continues to stay out right now. Oh no, sorry, Vincent Skillback is in this lap. He was just on pit entry. So I would assume that Rory Windrum, your other car who has not pitted yet, will come down this lap as well. Maybe that purple number 12 car going to be a bit sensible right now and not abuse his tires too much. As I say that though, he really sends it through turn 2 and closes right onto the rear of Sean Thompson.
Yeah, he needs to make the move this lap or next lap while he has the big tire advantage. After that, it'll get a lot tougher.
Down into turn 4. He's looking to the inside. But Sean Thompson doing a good job to squeeze him there and cut off the nose. So Adam, where would be... Sorry, go ahead.
What? It just depends on where you're stronger, I guess, as to where you make the move. Really anywhere you can get a good run. Like if he gets a good run through here and can stay close through the high-speed right-hander, you can get a good enough draft down the back straight and make a dive. Looks like he is going to get a good run. He was able to take a tighter line, and hopefully if he can switch to the inside line, he won't be able to, but he can at least go deep here and then maybe try to hold it around the outside.
Does look like he's going to back off just a little bit, maybe thinking of the over-under here, but not able to pull alongside. You can definitely...
But he can still set this up through here if he can stay close to the final 2 corners, and you can get a really good draft down the front straight and make a dive into turn 1. That's probably the easiest pass on the track.
You definitely can see just how much fresher his tires are, able to drive the car a lot harder in some of these corners. And he's sticking close. And he's running very wide, trying to get the maximum run down this start-finish straight. And I think he's going to try and take a look now as they work their way down into turn 1. Sean Thompson going to hold the inside line, sending Sean Lindsell to the outside. Not really your best place to make the move work.
Yeah, Lindsell unfortunately lost some momentum off the final corner, getting the 2 wheels on the gravel. With how slick the gravel and grass is in this new tire model, you really can't afford to do that.
Still sticking close though, looking down towards the inside. Able to get further alongside this time, but Sean Thompson again holding the outside, not able to hold it well enough. I think that Sean Lindsell up into 4th position now. Sean Thompson continuing to fight on that inside. He does have the superior line coming out here. And he's going to hold that inside line all the way down to turn 6. I think Sean Lindsell going to have to back out here.
But if he can stay really tight, he can get that run down the back straight, maybe try that move again. Yeah, you can see how much tighter of a line Lindsell is able to take there.
And again, Sean Thompson holding that inside line. And again, able to hold off the moves of Sean Lindsell, but Sean again just showing how much fresher those tires are, getting so much better traction. And he's really having to work hard here to set this move up.
And Thompson's having to work really hard to keep him behind. He's sliding the rear almost on entry to every corner here. And on the exit, as you can see.
We're watching some fantastic fighting out here from 4th position in your V8 Americas race. Sean Lindsell has gotten to the inside, and Sean Thompson trying to squeeze him. He's going to have to move back towards the outside, and I think giving the position to Sean Lindsell as long as he doesn't dive too deep. They're fighting hard. Sean Thompson back to the inside. He's going to make Sean Lindsell work for this around the outside of turn number 3. Wow, there's some great fighting we're seeing. They're still wheel to wheel as they work their way down to turn number 4. And finally, Sean Lindsell able to get clear, but Sean Thompson still thinking of the move and making Sean Lindsell defend so hard. These guys are fighting tooth and nail. Now that he's passed at him, how easy is it going to be for Sean Thompson to really try and make a move back with his older tires?
It's going to be pretty hard unless, like, he was trying to pressure Lindsell, you know, those first couple corners, because if Lindsell makes a mistake, then he can get by. But I think now that they have the amount of separation they have, I don't think he's really going to have a chance unless he cools his tires down and Lindsell kills his in the next few laps. He can come back over the, you know, like 5 laps later. But one thing you noticed going down the front straight is I think Lindsell had a shorter gear ratio because he topped out in 6th on the last 2 laps in the draft, so that kind of hurt him going into turn 1, making that move, but he was still able to do it, even bouncing off the limit.
So maybe being out in clean air will actually help him a little bit here. He's not going to be bouncing off that rev limiter, but Sean Thompson behind, if he's able to stick close, maybe he'll be able to get the move done. Further back in your field, well, I say further back, it's just one position back. Matthew Deere currently on the back of Christian Smart. Now Matthew Deere in a similar situation to Sean Lindsell, except he's got an extra lap fresher tires over that driver in front. So Christian Smart came down pit lane on lap 9. So he's already done 9 laps on those tires. Still looking at a further 5 laps to go.
Yeah, the only difference is here, I guess, we're further into the stint now, so their tires have equalized a little bit more just off of that, but and now it comes down a lot to how each of them have managed their tires to this point. Although obviously Deere will have, you know, a tire advantage pitting that much later.
So as your tire fall off equalizes, does that also mean that someone on slightly older tires, if they make a mistake, is it easier to make a mistake as your tires get worn down? Is I guess the question I'm really trying to ask.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot easier to overheat the tires, and as you can see, Smart got on the grass there on the entry on wide, but yeah, it's really easy to, especially once you start sliding them a little bit, you know, and then you overheat them, then it's just a continuous cycle of more sliding and more overheating, so really you have to be disciplined to try to not slide the rear, especially as the run goes on. You know, even though sliding the rear can be a little bit faster sometimes, you know, you gotta just manage it, and long term it'll be faster, it'll be better on tire wear. Another big thing is in these cars you can make some pretty substantial ARB adjustments as the run goes on to keep the balance of the car as you like it. So you know, some of the guys might struggle if the balance of the car changes and they haven't kept up with the ARB changes appropriately, and then they start driving the car too deep into the corner, overheating the fronts or sliding the rears off the corner, you know, that also can cause issues. So it's easy to get behind on ARB changes.
And not only do they have those in-car tools, but open setup, so all of these drivers will have been working on the setup throughout the week. Some of these drivers obviously doing that AOSC Enduro this morning technically, will have maybe put in more work than some of the others in your field. And so maybe someone like Forzan El Nabi, this is just a way for him to start reaping some I-rating benefits of all that hard work that got him that AOSC win last night, as we do see Matthew Deere continuing to close on that rear bumper of Christian Smart. You can see Christian struggling a bit more with his tires, It's not like Matthew's having an easy time of it by any means. We're just able to be a little bit more clean throughout the lap. As we come around to complete lap number 19, we're going to have 5 laps to go as they come across the line this time around.
There's also a big queue near the back with Blake Dubois, Craig Schultz, and Richard fighting for 12th.
Let's go ahead and take a look at that battle. So Blake Dubois, your silver car, showing some battle scars as Richard Tam looking to the inside of Craig Schultz. So Richard Tam also showing some considerable battle scars. Obtained in an incident with a car in front of him, so
A couple incidents.
a couple of incidents. So maybe Blake Dubois looking in his rearview mirror and not wanting to reacquaint himself with Richard Tam in that Napa Auto Parts Holden Camaro, I believe. No, Holden Commodore. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Holden
Yeah.
Commodore.
Yeah, Craig Schultz made a mistake. He's really struggling on his tires. Richard was able to get by. Now we'll be able to see if Richard could get through on Blake. I think they were both getting held up by Craig before, though.
Back out in the battle for 6th place, though. You can see Kristen Smart having to defend from Matthew Deere. Matthew Deere making some big gains in terms of I rating. Your biggest gainers in terms of their qualifying position would have to be Christian Smart right now, up 6 places. You also have Vincent Sigelbelk, also up 6 places. Your biggest losers, Brian Borg down 6 places in 11th. Then you have Jack Widass, who obviously was involved in that incident in lap 1, into turn 1 with Brian Borg. He had to retire from the race on lap 1, so he will be down 12 spots come the end of this race. So it does appear as though Kristen Smart and Matthew Deere, the battle has equalized a little bit. Matthew not able to really pressure Christian that much. But Richard really working on the back now of Blake Dubois. So let's go ahead and take a look at this battle again. So they work their way down towards the middle part of the track.
Richard has like 3 or 4 lap fresher tires than Blake, so that'll definitely help him. Blake was like the first one to pit out of the whole field, if I remember correctly.
You're right, Blake Dubois came down on lap 8. Richard coming in on lap 11, so 3 lap fresher tires. He's 10 laps into his run right now, so he's also going to be struggling with his tires. So like Adam was mentioning before, fall-off will have equalized now, so let's see what Richard's able to do. Is he able to effect a pass on Blake Dubois? This is your battle for 2nd in your Americas class. Jeremy Rogers in 9th, currently leading that. Blake Dubois in 2nd and Richard Tam in 3rd for your Americas class. Rory Windrum, your 4th place, and only other non-Australian car, he's currently in 16th place.
Yeah, Matthew Deere is definitely struggling less than Christian Smart, but then every time he gets a chance of a decent run, he just gets a little bit impatient, spins the rear tires, and then he loses the run he had and has to set it all up again.
So Matthew Deere getting a little too overeager as we work our way back to the start-finish line. As Forzan El Nabi crosses the line, complete lap 21, we're going to have 3 laps to go in this race here. And so
I think the closest battle on the track is Richard and Blake.
You are correct. But for both the battles that we're seeing right now, Richard Tam and Blake Dubois battling for 12th on track, and Christian Smart and Matthew Deere fighting for 6th on track. Not much time to get things done now. It's not about tires anymore. I think it's about which driver is really going to risk it and send a bold move down the inside of the driver in front. So Richard Tam a little bit too far behind Blake Dubois to really think about a move here. As we see these 3 Holden cars moving their way around tight twisty section at the end of the track. these two battles that we have been following currently getting a little bit spread out right now. I think old drivers struggling with their tires as we come towards the final laps of the race. So Christian Smart, he has pulled about a second gap on Matthew Deere right now. So Matthew Deere really struggling with those tires now.
Yeah, I mean, he was pushing hard to try to make the move work, which is what he had to do to try to get a run, but just, burn his tires up in the process.
2 left to go. 2 to go.
And so 2 laps to go in this race. Fauzan El Nabi crossing the line. So back to this battle though, Richard Tam, he's still half a second behind Blake Dubois. Greg Schock still hanging on to that tail of this little battle, but not able to really stick close enough. But to me right now, Adam, it doesn't look as though Richard's really got enough to try and make his way past Blake Dubois.
Yeah, I think he needs Blake to make a mistake somewhere in order to really make a move, like you say, because he seems like he can't really get that close. Because it seems like they're pretty even on pace, really.
So out front, while these two continue, as Richard tries to work on the rear bumper of Blake Dubois, Fauzan El Nabi making his way back down this back straight here. He's had a flawless race this time, not so clean last week. This time around, pole position winner. He's also got the fastest lap of this race by
White flag. Stay smooth.
Brian Borg's actually done a decent job to come back through the field a little bit after his bit of misfortune at the start and in the Richard Tam incident. He's back up to 11th. Hear you if you're saying anything.
Adam?
Yeah.
Okay, you can hear me now?
Yeah.
All right, apologies for technical difficulties. My mic decided it didn't want to be a mic anymore. I was trying to give you some very excited commentary about that battle because it was fairly exciting as they were fighting side by side. That did distract me just at a critical time. Fauzan El Nabi has crossed the line out front. So he's going to take the race win here from James Scott, Jake Maloney, Sean Lindsell, Sean Thompson, Christian Smart, Matthew Deere, Marty Hansen, Jeremy Rogers, Vincent Skilbeck, and Brian Borg. But Blake Dubois and Richard Tam still very close as they come across the line. And Craig Schultz, Jason Fairwinds, and Rory Windrum are going to be the final cars on your lead lap. So again, apologies for your technical difficulties there, but let's go ahead and quickly take a look at the race results. Still waiting for the race results to become official, but there we go. Forzan El Nabi, your number 1 car, takes the win by 5 seconds
Good, bro.
from James Scott behind him. And you got
I think
Jake
a lot of
Maloney.
people were frustrated after the first corner, man.
How do I turn this off? There we go. Sean Lindsell, Sean Thompson, Christian Smart, Matthew Deere, Marty Hansen, Jeremy Rogers, Vincent Skilbeck, Brian Borg, Blake Dubois, Richard Tam, Power Supply team owner, struggling down in 13th place. Then you got Craig Schultz, Jason Fairwinds, Rory Windrum, Ben Morris, Stefan Kakashek. And your last car did not complete the first lap, as Jack Witt has to complete the field. So Adam, any reflections on the race that we just witnessed?
I think Richard made a bad name for Air Nationals. And yeah, I mean, it was a pretty straightforward run for all the guys in the top 5, or top 4 at least. They just finished where they started. And yeah, we saw some interesting strategy. Both the overcut and the undercut worked depending on the situation. So that was cool.
Yeah, fun little race here. It was cool to see how some of these drivers did approach that pit strategy. And yeah, good finish to the race as well, with Richard Tam fighting Blake Dubois all the way to the line. But for now, that will be it. Thank you for spending your Friday evening with us. That was Adam Blocker, and my name is Arjuna. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.